Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today we're back at Eden Memorial Park in Mission Hills to find such stars as James Caan, Dan Curtis, Marty Allen, and many more. Join us, won't you? Welcome back to Eden Memorial Park, a Jewish cemetery located in the northern end of the San Fernando Valley, adjacent to San Fernando Mission Catholic Cemetery. We first visited this cemetery way back in 2018, finding stars like Groucho Marx, Lenny Bruce, and Mitzi Green. We're back again today to visit some stars we missed the first time around, and others we've lost since. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out Part 1. Let's begin today not far in from the entrance on the left in Gilboa section. Near the southwest corner of the cemetery is the grave of a film pioneer, Alan Curtis. Alan was a writer and director during the silent era. He worked prolifically, directing close to 300 films between 1913 and 1922, specializing in comedy shorts. A number of his films would star Louise Fazenda and Lon Chaney, like Poor Jake's Demise and Almost an Actress. He retired from filmmaking before the dawn of the talkies and lived to be 83. Straight east on the left is Family Estates. Here lies George Wyle. He was a songwriter and composer, mainly for television. He's perhaps best remembered today for writing the music for The Ballad of Gilligan's Isle, the theme for the show Gilligan's Island, with lyrics by the show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz. The show ran for 3 seasons, and The Ballad of Gilligan's Island remains one of the most recognized TV themes in history. The minnow would be lost here on Gilligan's Island. George also co-wrote one of your favorite Christmas songs, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which was introduced by Andy Williams in 1963.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Other shows he contributed music for include The Flip Wilson Show and David Copperfield's TV specials. George passed away from leukemia at age 87. Circling around to the next section north, we arrive at Judea. This is where Louis Dauber is laid to rest. He was a supporting actor who often appeared as clergymen on screen in shows like NYPD Blue, The Bernie Mac Show, Melrose Place, and Diagnosis Murder. He also appeared in film, including as the toy store manager in Jingle All the Way. He died from cancer at age 70. North of here is the Court of Tribes Mausoleum, featuring this beautiful gold mosaic, which depicts the 12 tribes. Turning left at this mosaic, we find the grave of Phil Arnold, an actor who appeared in close to 200 productions throughout his career. He began appearing on film in the 30s, and by the 40s and 50s was a supporting player with the Three Stooges in shorts like The Ghost Talks, Pardon My Backfire, and Tricky Dicks. And regular TV appearances include The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet and The Red Skelton Hour, as well as guest appearances on most of the great shows of the 50s and 60s. And Arnold's feature films include Hollywood Barn Dance. He died from a heart attack at age 58. Turning back east in the mausoleum, we find one familiar to you if you saw our Food Lovers special, Al Lapin Jr. You breakfast aficionados will remember Lapin as the co-founder of International House of Pancakes, IHOP. Al formed IHOP in 1958 with his brother and a friend, the first restaurant being located in nearby Toluca Lake. The next 2 locations opened in Panorama City and Baldwin Hills. The chain has since grown to over 1,000 locations worldwide. Al lived to be 76. Just around the corner, low on the wall, is the crypt of Sam Denoff. He was a writer and producer, particularly known for his work in television comedy. He wrote or co-wrote some 29 episodes of The Dick Van Dyke Show, including some of its most popular. He also co-created shows like Good Morning World, Lots of Luck, and perhaps most notably, That Girl, starring Marlo Thomas. Sam also appeared in front of the camera, including as Lord Jerome in the Princess Diaries films. He died from complications of Alzheimer's at the age of 83. Across the street east is Masada section. This next individual was not a famous entertainer, but his tragic story did inspire a movie. Here lies murder victim Nicholas Markowitz. He was just 15 when he was caught up in a drug debt owed by his older brother to a local drug dealer named Jesse James Hollywood. In August 2000, Nicholas was kidnapped by Hollywood and his gang with the intent to hold him for ransom for the debt. He was taken to Santa Barbara and attended house parties with his captors, others unaware that anything was amiss. Jesse James Hollywood later determined that rather than returning Nick home, where they could potentially face the legal ramifications of kidnapping, he ordered young Nicholas to be killed, the order given to another of his debtors as a way of paying off his debt. Nicholas was shot and killed in the Santa Ynez Mountains and buried in a shallow grave. His killers, and Jesse James Hollywood, who ordered the hit, were all arrested and convicted of the murder. The events inspired the 2006 film Alpha Dog, which starred Anton Yelchin in the role inspired by Nick, renamed in the film as Zach. Doubling back west, let's circle around to Mount of Olives. Here lies actor Howard Caine. He's perhaps best remembered for his role as Major Hochstetter in the TV war comedy Hogan's Heroes in the 60s and 70s.
What is this man doing here?
He's pouring champagne, Major Hochstetter.
What is he doing here?
Other TV appearances include Get Smart, The Lucy Show, and Death Valley Days. And on film he played Judy Garland's husband in Judgment at Nuremberg, and played Lewis Morris in the musical 1776. Howard was also a talented musician, becoming quite adept at bluegrass banjo. He died from a heart attack at the age of 67. Not far northwest in this same section is the grave of Jerry Heller, a name familiar to you fans of West Coast rap. Jerry was a music manager and promoter who was a key figure in the rise of West Coast rap. Earlier in his career, he had risen to prominence promoting artists like Marvin Gaye and Creedence Clearwater Revival. In the 1980s, he co-founded Ruthless Records with Eazy-E, which would sign and manage groups like NWA and the Black Eyed Peas. NWA's debut album, Straight Outta Compton, would become one of the most significant in West Coast hip-hop and gangsta rap of that era. The album's title would serve as the basis for the 2015 biopic about NWA. In that film, Heller was portrayed by Paul Giamatti. Heller would sue the studio over inaccuracies in the depiction of him in the film. Jerry Heller also released a memoir about his life and work in the music industry titled Ruthless, a Memoir. He died after suffering a heart attack while driving and crashing his car. Heller's lawyer blamed the depiction of him in Straight Outta Compton as a contributing factor, claiming that if not for the stress of that film, Jerry would be alive today. In the northern end of this section are a series of walled garden areas. I'd hazard a guess that many of you out there are fans of Dark Shadows, and if so, you know the name Dan Curtis. Dan was a television writer and producer who is best known for creating the gothic soap opera Dark Shadows, which ran for 6 seasons and a whopping 1,225 episodes between 1966 and 1971. It follows the lives of the Collins family, incorporating supernatural occurrences and characters like ghosts and vampires. It became popular amongst young audiences at that time and has since garnered a cult following. The popularity of the series spawned feature films, including the 2012 Tim Burton adaptation starring Johnny Depp as Barnabas Collins. Dan Curtis is also known to horror fans for producing other cult classics like the Night Stalker series, the Trilogy of Terror, and directing Burnt Offerings. Dan also worked in war dramas, directing the miniseries The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. He won an Emmy for the latter. Dan Curtis died from a brain tumor at the age of 78. Across the street north is Mount Jerusalem. Here is the grave of screen legend, one of the greatest of all time, James Caan. He began his acting career making television appearances in the 60s. His role as Brian Piccolo in the TV movie Brian's Song earned him critical acclaim and an Emmy nomination. The following year, he performed in the role that would become his best known and earn him an Oscar nomination. In 1972, he played Sonny Corleone, the hot-headed elder Corleone brother in The Godfather.
What are you gonna do? Nice college boy, huh? Didn't want to get mixed up in the family business? Huh? Now you want to gun down a police captain, why? Because he slapped you in the face a little bit? Huh? What do you think, this is the army where you shoot him a mile away? You gotta get up close like this, and bada bing, you blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit. Come here. Mwah!
He would reprise his role in The Godfather Part 2. James continued to have significant roles in films like The Gambler, Funny Lady, Misery, Thief, and more, including the 2003 Christmas comedy, Elf.
You look like you came from the North Pole.
That's exactly where I came from. Santa must have called you.
Oh, yeah, sure. He just got off the cell phone with me.
On television, he played Ed in the comedy drama Las Vegas. James Caan remained active right up until his death from a heart attack at age 82. Continuing north, we arrive at Gardens of Eden. Near the road, we find Bob Schiller. He was well known as a comedy writer for television, often collaborating with Bob Weisskopf. You fans of I Love Lucy will remember Bob Schiller for writing or co-writing some 53 episodes of the classic sitcom, including some of the most beloved, like the season 5 and 6 episodes alongside big guest stars like George Reeves, Bob Hope, Orson Welles, and John Wayne.
Bob!
How do you do? My name is Superman.
Oh, boy, am I glad to see you!
Bob continued his work with Lucy on The Lucy Desi Comedy Hour and The Lucy Show. He also wrote for sitcoms and variety shows like The Red Skelton Hour, Flip, Maude, The Carol Burnett Show, and All in the Family. He won 2 Emmys for his writing, for All in the Family and Flip. After decades of making us laugh, Bob passed away at the age of 98. Across the street west is Mount of Ephraim. Here lies Harvey Cohen. He was a composer and orchestrator known particularly for his work in animated television. He composed incidental music for shows like Tasmania, Batman the Animated Series, The Baby Huey Show, Superman the Animated Series, and The Spooktacular New Adventures of Casper. He would win 2 Daytime Emmy Awards for Batman the Animated Series and Aladdin. Cohen also worked as an orchestrator for feature films, including on King Kong, Final Destination 2, Holes, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Harvey was just 55 when he died from a heart attack. Further west into the Mount Ephraim section, we find the grave of Terry Becker. His best-known acting role is noted right here on his marker, as Chief Sharky in the 60s series Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, in some 71 episodes.
Go on, Chief. Well, sir, when we were up against a real tough line, we had a motto. If you can't go through them, go around them.
He also had guest roles on shows like M Squad, Perry Mason, and The Twilight Zone. Becker also dabbled in directing, helming episodes of shows like Mission Impossible, Room 222, MASH, and Love American Style. He also directed and produced a feature film in 1974, The Thirsty Dead. Terry Becker lived to be 93. In the northeast corner of the cemetery are the Gardens of Jacob. Here lies Bruce Gary. He was a noted drummer in the 70s and 80s. He's particularly remembered as the drummer for the band The Knack, who had a hit in the song My Sharona.
My Sharona,
After the Knack broke up in the 80s, Bruce became an in-demand session and performing drummer for other artists like Bob Dylan, Rod Stewart, Bette Midler, Sheryl Crow, and more. He would be nominated for 2 Grammy Awards throughout his career. Bruce was just 55 when he died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Not far north in this same section is Roy Stewart. You fans of the 60s sitcom Gomer Pyle USMC will remember Roy as Corporal Boyle in some 58 episodes. He also made appearances on shows like Bewitched, Gidget, Hazel, and Sanford and Son. And his film roles include as Joe in The Love God and Mr. Fox in Prime Risk. Roy was 78 when he died from cancer. Continuing south, we arrive at the Court of Abraham section. Here on the east side is the grave of Don Diamond. He's remembered for his roles as sidekicks in popular sitcoms in the 50s and 60s, including as Crazy Cat on F Troop, Corporal Reyes on Zorro, and El Toro on The Adventures of Kit Carson. He'd make guest appearances on many of the great shows of the era like WKRP in Cincinnati and Columbo, and appeared in films as well. Don also had an extensive career doing voice work for animation, perhaps most notably as Toro in the cartoon series Tijuana Toads. Don died from heart failure at age 90. And finally, let's circle back around to Mount Olives East to revisit someone we featured in our first video here. At the time, his grave only had a temporary marker. Since then, this nice new marker has been placed for Marty Allen. He was an actor and comedian who got his start performing in the nightclub circuit. He'd become well known as half of the comedy duo Allen and Rossi, who had a successful Las Vegas billing and a string of popular comedy albums.
Hello there.
Hey, are you really a golfer?
No, I'm your Avon representative.
They were also frequent performers on The Ed Sullivan Show. Marty Allen would perform on Broadway and appear as himself as a panelist in numerous television shows like Password and The Hollywood Squares. And would you believe he also played Edgar Allan Poe in Rod Serling's Night Gallery? Marty became known for his catchphrase, "Hello there," referenced right here on his marker. It became the title of his tour of military hospitals to entertain wounded soldiers. Later in his career, he would team up with his second wife, Karen Kate Blackwell, as a musical comedy act. Marty lived to be 95, passing away from pneumonia in 2018. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.